Good morning, CP Pre-Calc. Now, today is day 2 of circles, so we're going to continue working on circles today. Now, the only difference is today we're going to be given circles that are not in standard form. Now, standard form is the form that we worked with yesterday. So when you hear me say standard form, all right, we have standard form. We are talking about, I'm going to make it a little thicker because I think it's easy to write. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. That is standard form for a circle. All right. Now, in order to change our circle our equations to standard form, if we're given a circle equation, we're going to have to remember how to complete the square. So that's what we're going to first start talking about, how to complete the square. And we're going to complete the square when a is 1. Now, what does a equaling 1 mean? It means when I have a quadratic and I'm in that form, and we have that form ax squared plus bx plus c, we're saying that that a value is always 1. So that leading coefficient in front of that x squared term will always be 1. Now, what does it mean to complete the square? We want to make what we call a perfect square trinomial. Now, what is that? Now, a perfect square trinomial is a trinomial when it is factored that has the two same binomial factors. So, in this example, let's remember how to complete the square. And if you don't, that's fine. We're going to go over it. We're going to form a perfect square trinomial out of the binomials in my first problems. I have A, B, and C. Now, how do I do that? How do we do that? Let's take this value. We're going to take the B value. You take B, divide it by 2, and square it. Now, in this case, our B value is 4. So you're taking 4 divided by 2, and you're squaring it. Well, 4 divided by 2 is equivalent to 2. If I square that, that is 4. So my perfect square trinomial would be x squared plus 4x plus 4. So that is what I'm inputting in. That makes it a perfect square trinomial. And the reason it's a perfect square is because when I factor it, look what happens. I say what adds to 4 and multiplies to positive 4, that's 2 and 2. I get the same two binomial factors, and I can rewrite it as the quantity of x plus 2 squared. That makes it a perfect square trinomial. All right. Now that same logic applies for every time I want to make a perfect square trinomial when my a value is equivalent to 1. So let's take a look at letter B. Same thing. I take my B, I take that negative 12 divided by 2 and square it. So negative 12 divided by 2 is a positive 6. Positive 6 squared is 36. So we're going to be adding 36 to our binomial to make it a perfect square trinomial. So now here I have a perfect square trinomial right there. That is my perfect square trinomial. Now, you can tell it's a perfect square because when I factor it, if I factored it, I would say what adds to negative 12 and multiplies to a positive 36, and that would be x minus 6 and x minus 6. I have the same two binomial factors, meaning I can write it as x minus 6 squared, making that a perfect square trinomial. Now, the last problem, I'm still doing the same concept. The only thing is I'm going to actually be working with a fraction here, and that is fine. So let's take a look at it. If I take a look at my problem here, I'm going to take B, which is 3, divide it by 2, and square it. Don't put it into decimal. Just work with that fraction. 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides. This here would be my perfect square trinomial right there. Now I'm going to say what adds to 3 and multiplies to a 9/4. Key thing here is the value that is going to end up being in that binomial will be what you see in your parentheses. So for example, 4 divided by 2 is that 2 value. Negative 12 divided by 2 is that negative 6 in my binomial. So when I factor this out, it's going to look like x plus 3/2, x plus 3/2. And again, I can then write that as a square of a binomial. So it's x plus 3/2 squared, making my trinomial a perfect square trinomial. All right, guys. Now we're going to take that concept and apply it to circles. And it's going to be a little different because in a circle equation, we have both x's and y's. So step one, we're going to write write the standard form of each equation of a circle and determine the center and the radius, then graph the circle. Now, in order to write it in standard form, there's a couple things that we need to do. Step one is we are going to put all the x terms together. So I'm going to put x squared and then my next x term, 14x. And then I'm going to put my y terms, but I'm going to leave a space. So I'm going to put plus y squared minus 12y. And then I'm going to move the constant to the opposite side of the equation. So I'm moving that constant. And what's that constant? A constant is something that does not have a variable attached to it. So that would be my positive 4. If I moved it to the other side, it would be a negative 4. Now, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to complete the square with each variable. So I can complete the square with x, and I'm going to complete the square with my y value. Now, let's take a look. We have to remember that this is an equation. So whatever I do to one side of my equation, I must also do to the other. So if I complete the square at my x, I would take that 14, divide it by 2, and square it. Well, 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 squared is 49. I would add 49 in my parentheses to complete the square, to make a perfect square trinomial. If I add 49 to the left side of my equation, meaning the left side of my equal sign, I must also add it to the right. Okay, same thing with, now let's go to y. To complete the square at y, I'm taking negative 12 divided by 2 and square it. Well, negative 12 divided by 2 is a positive 6. Square that is a 36. So I'm going to add 36 to make a perfect square trinomial. If I add it to the left side of my equal sign, I must also add it to the right to keep an equivalent equation. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to factor my two perfect square trinomials. And if I factor them, I'm going to get the square of a binomial. Well, x squared plus 14x plus 49 factors into x plus 7 times x plus 7. So that simplifies to x plus 7 squared. Now, I know I'm going to my y. I'm plus the quantity here. I have y squared minus 12y plus 36. What adds to negative 12 and multiplies to 36? It's a negative 6. So you're getting y minus 6 squared. And what would that be equivalent to? Well, let's simplify our other side. We have negative 4 plus 49 plus 36 is 81. Now you can see that we have an equation here, guys. This equation right here is in the standard form of my circle. I can identify my center. I can identify my radius. Now my center, remember, it's x minus h plus y minus k. I ask, what am I subtracting? So if I take a look at this, the first thing I say, x plus 7. What am I subtracting from x? It's going to be the opposite. So it's a negative 7 for my center. If I take a look at my next one, I have minus 6. So I'm subtracting a 6. So that is a 6. And my radius would be the square root of 81, which would be 9. All right, guys. Now this probably, if we look at it, won't fit on our circles. So what we can do is we can make if we want to, let me see if I can blow this up. So if you look, this is a 10 by 10, I believe. So you can make everything go by 2s. So if you want, you can just label like let's make everything go by 2s if that's easier to graph. All right, so that means instead of moving over 1, every time we're moving over 2. So if I'm going to negative 7, it would be negative 2, negative 4, negative 6. And my negative 7, I think it's easier if I make it a little bigger. My negative 7, so it's 2, 4, 6, negative 7 is about right there, okay? But actually, I got to go up, though. So I've got negative 7, and then I go 6. So then I'm going 2, 4, 6, so negative 7, 6 is about there. And then I'm counting over 9. So if you're counting over 9, that's 1, and then it's you're going by 2. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. You're counting up, down. So 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And it's okay to make everything by 2s. I just have to label it 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 if you want to make sure it fits on your graph. So, and then we do the best we can, and I cannot do a good job on this program, but I will try. So we draw our circle. All right, guys? So we're just adding that step of completing the square and writing that equation in standard form. All right, let's try one more together. So let's take a look. Oops, I have a typo. So let's fix that typo. This should say x squared. There should be a plus right in there. So there should be a plus between the y squared and the 2x. So that means when I rewrite this, let's start writing it. I have x terms, and actually I'm going to make it a little more narrow again. I have my x terms first. So I have x squared plus 2x, and I'm going to leave a space. Then I'm going to do my y terms, and I'm going to have y squared minus 24y. And then again, we are going to move the constant to the opposite side. So I'm going to make, if I move a positive 120, that will be a negative 120. Now we're going to complete the square. So if I complete the square for my first term, for my x's, I take 2, divide it by 2, and square it. Now that'd be 1 squared, which is 1. I add 1 here, and I add 1 to the opposite side. Okay, now the same thing here. I have that plus, I forgot. Okay, we're adding then y squared minus 24y. So I have negative 24 divided by 2 squared. So that'd be a negative 12 squared, which would be a plus 144. And I would add that to both sides. Okay, now I can factor my perfect square trinomials. The first one, x squared plus 2x plus 1, factors into x plus 1 squared, that perfect square trinomial. My next one, I have y squared minus 24y plus 144, factors into y minus 12 squared. And if I simplify my other side of my equation, what do I get, guys? I have negative 120 plus 1 plus 144. I'm getting 25. So again, I can easily see my center and my radius. My center, what am I subtracting from x? I'm subtracting a negative 1. That's how I have an x plus 1, because x minus a negative 1 is a plus 1. What's my y value? My y value will be a positive 12. All right. My radius will be 5. The square root of 25 is 5. Now again, I'm going to do everything again. You guys, we can adjust it. All right, guys, we can adjust this. We're going to do everything by 2s. So I'm going to write like my 2s so that I'm aware that I'm doing everything by 2s. And I'm going to start with my center. 1 would be halfway through, 1, and then, negative 1 and 12. So 2, 4, 6, 8. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 would be in there. Okay. So there we go. And then we're counting 5s. So we're counting 5s. 5 up, 5 down, 5 left, 5 right. And then I graph that circle as best I can. All right, guys. So that's the only thing we're adding today, that perfect square trinomial factor. So what you're going to do now is you're going to complete 3, 4, and 5 for your assignment today. There is a hint in 5. Make sure you pay attention to it. Divide the entire equation by 6 prior to completing the square. I hope you guys have a great day. If you have any questions, please come to office hours. Or if you just want to stop by and say hi, I would love to see you guys. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. And I will see you next week or hopefully today in office hours. Have a great day.